It's February. We have about 6 inches of snow outside, and I'm still able to produce nice green lettuce. When you go to establish this, what you're going to be using is basically, they have like the styrofoam. They come in little squares they can pull out, and you can get them in different varieties. I'll put the details below. So this is a seed pack that I bought, and I want to point out a thing here. So I'm going to be continually harvesting this. So if I'm planting lettuce or something that you want to keep in mind is, if you think of like a head of lettuce, I'm not going to be able to just keep peeling stuff off as easily. Generally, you would let that go to a whole head, meaning that I'm not going to keep harvesting this multiple times in short periods. But if I have lettuce that's a bit more open, like these other varieties, that way I can come down, pull off the stuff that's older and on the outsides and let the inside continue to grow and just harvest it maybe every week or so. So that's what we opted for. Now, if you were going to plant these, all I would do is take this, open up, you can see that there's thousands of seeds. I would take maybe like 3 seeds for each one of these, because not every one of them is going to sprout. You would take that seed, and if you can see here, there's a little hole. They're growing there. But I would take that seed, and I would place it right in there, in the hole. And then what I would do is just simply water it. Get some warm tap water. And I would just go over top of it, and you can see when it gets wet, it turns a darker color when it becomes saturated. And I would just fill this up with warm water, not hot water, so, you know, just a little warm. That helps to germinate this a little bit better. And what I would do is, I would just put a lid on this, if this was just seeds, and I would let it sit there, maybe in the sun or whatever, and I'd let it sit there for maybe about 12 hours or so, while it's saturated. After about 12 hours, I would come back, pour off the excess water, and then I would let it sit there for the remainder of the day. Then generally what we would do, once every other day, I would come back in, put some warm water on it, let it soak for maybe a minute or so, pour off the excess, and then put the lid back on. Now this, what we have here, is approximately about a week old. You can see a lot of these have really sprouted. These are about a week old, as you can see here. And some of the varieties have really sprouted. They're about maybe an inch or 2.5 centimeters in height, and other varieties are just starting to germinate about a week out. Generally speaking, when I do this, I like to go about 10 to 14 days to make sure that they've germinated. But the other thing that's really important before I stick it in the hydroponic system, the thing that needs to absorb all the nutrients are going to be the roots. So as long as you have roots that are available to go into the hydroponic system like this, so these have roots, but these do not. As long as they have roots, they'll be able to absorb the nutrients from the hydroponic system. If they do not have roots available, they will dry out and die. I have not had success when just trying to put these directly in the hydroponic system. So I have to first get an old, you know, Tupperware container or whatever, and make sure it's clean, and start them off, and really get them germinated in a nice warm area. So the other thing to keep in mind is when you're planting seeds, not every one of them is going to survive and germinate. So I'll overplant them. So maybe I'll plant 2 to 4 seeds if they're really tiny, and then what you'll have is a whole bunch of little seeds here, or these seedlings that have sprouted. And what you want to do is when they get, you know, about an inch high or so, start plucking out the ones that don't look as good. So you would just come in here, if you can see here, and I'm just going to pull that out. And that's it. So you're going to want to do this, because if you don't, they're going to be competing with each other. Basically, there's not enough space to have all of them grow. So I'll generally thin this out to, you know, 1 or 2 of the strongest. Make sure they establish roots. Once you have roots established, you can put them into the hydroponic system. So I have these little baskets that I'm going to be putting these in, and got a bunch of open spots. We just recently harvested, so we have I can use these open spots for now. Eventually I'll have to move them to another area when stuff starts to grow a little too big. So I just have an old Tupperware container that I put these in, and you can see that they grew up. They're about 12 days old now. So some of these haven't fully established, like to the point where they have good root structures, but the majority of them did, so I'm gonna pull those apart for now. So what you're looking for underneath here is, if you can see that little root, as long as they got roots, you can transplant them and they'll do pretty well. You want to also keep them a bit thinned out at 1 or 2 per pod. So all we're going to do is take that, make sure the roots are nice, and put the roots down in there. Try to not crush them or anything. Just kind of pull that down here. So there are roots. Make sure that that's pretty far down. So once we have our little plants in the pods and you have your roots at the bottom, I'm going to take this and find an open spot. So as you can see right here, just going to put it in there. Now as these get larger, I'm going to then move this to a lower tier. I just don't feel like paying for all the lighting at the moment when I just harvested. So I'll just keep it here for now for maybe a week until everything grows back, and then I'll probably move them down to a lower tier, put more lights on. And we're going to do that for the remainder. And then we just do the same thing over and over again for the remainder of these plants. Again, we want to make sure that they have good roots. And if you see at the bottom of this, you can see the roots. A couple of them, like these guys, I might wait a few more days before I put them in here. It's pretty easy, you just kind of peel them off. Try not to break any roots off. And as these get a little bit bigger, I'll start thinning these out. I really only want one of these per pod. You can see this is pretty quick and easy. So we have our roots. Put them in. Just want to pull that down. Make sure the roots are all the way at the bottom. We'll put that in another spot. There we go. Again, want to make sure you see some roots. I don't see roots on this one, so this might not make it if I transplant it. Give it a try anyway. And that's the pump just moving around the water, if you can hear that in the background. That has a nice set of roots on it. There. It's interesting, it's just little pieces of foam that you're planting in. It's amazing you can grow a full plant this way. So again, if I'm not really seeing any roots, I'm going to leave them in here for a couple more days. But once you start seeing those roots popping out, they're good to be transplanted. We'll wait for those to get more mature roots before we transplant them, just probably another week, and then should be able to transplant. All you really need are some lights, a hydroponic setup, a little bit of fertilizer or pump, and I'll put the details below. And I have this year round. I mean, it's the middle of winter. Look how green those are. Everything I buy is white and yellow and anemic and just doesn't look appetizing. This is delicious.
Yeah, you grew these with Daddy.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, they grew quick. So I'm just going to take and chop these up a little bit.